Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rochelle Rosen. I am the co-director of the BIRD core of the Advanced Rhode Island CTR. BIRD is the Biostatistics, Epidemiology, and Research Design core, and it's where the qualitative team at Advanced CTR lives. So when Advanced CTR asked me to do some kind of a public training, a qualitative event this spring, I said I wanted to have an opportunity to talk about using AI in qualitative research, because these are relatively new tools that many of us are getting our methodological heads around. I had imagined an in-person, very informal panel where we might all be having lunch and could talk about and wrestle with these topics together. Lunch was not possible, and interest in this topic far outseated the size of the room we had planned to put us in. So we've moved to this Zoom-based environment. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll introduce my two co-presenters and tell you a little bit how we're going to have the day go. So I'm a medical anthropologist. I'm at the Center for Behavioral and Preventive Medicine at the Miriam Hospital. I'm also an associate professor in the School of Public Health in the Department of Behavioral and Social Sciences, and also in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior. I also have the privilege of working as the associate director of the Qualitative Science and Methods Training Center. Kate, would you like to say hello?
Sure. I'm Kate Guthrie. I am a clinical psychologist by training, behavioral scientist in practice. I am part of the Center for Behavioral and Preventive Medicine at the Miriam Hospital, same as Rochelle. And I'm also part of the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior, professor, as well as professor in behavioral and social sciences at the School of Public Health.
And was there more, Kate?
Oh, I was just going to say, and I'm the director of the Qualitative Science and Methods Training Program, which is a core with the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior, and lives in the Center for Behavioral and Preventive Medicine.
Thank you. And we're also joined, I'm really excited to be joined today by Silvana Di Gregorio, who's a qualitative colleague of ours from London. Silvana, want to say hi?
Oh, hi, I'm Silvana Di Gregorio. I'm a sociologist and qualitative researcher, and my career has spanned from being an academic and director of a doctoral program in a management school in the UK, having also then 16 years running my own consultancy in supporting people doing qualitative research using what are called cactus tools like NVivo, Atlas TI, Max QDA. And since 2013, I've been working for what was originally QSR International, but has now been rebranded as NVivo, who are the developers of NVivo. And I'm their product research director and head of qualitative research. So I work closely with the product team in understanding what qualitative researchers need and how we should be developing our products.
I'm glad you're here. So one of the things that Silvana's going to do is to demonstrate the AI tools in NVivo, and that's going to be roughly the next 15 or 20 minutes. Then Kate and I are going to talk a little bit together and with each other about our ideas for methodological considerations and best practices. Also some cautions and concerns. We hope to get that done by 20 over quarter of the hour. And then we thought we would try and open the discussion or answer the questions that you put in the chat. This originally was designed to be from 12 to 1:30. We have planned content from 12 to 1, but we will stay on for open chat with anybody who wants to continue to talk about this until 1:20. This is being recorded. You will have seen that message. Our plan is to make the recording available on the CTR website. We have set this up so that the messages in the chat will come to us as your hosts only. We want this to sort of be like a webinar, but to allow the kind of open discussion that Zoom does allow when it's a regular Zoom meeting. So we're trying this as a hybrid approach. So that's our goal for today. And Silvana, I think I'm going to stop share and give you control of the cursor and let you tell us about the AI tools in NVivo.
Okay, so I shall just share my screen. Right, so everyone can see my screen, I hope.
It looks good. Thank you.
Right, okay, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the NVivo AI assistant, which is within the NVivo 15 product. And what I'm going to start with is because I know that some of you either have never used NVivo or who've never even heard of NVivo, I'm just going to start by just giving a quick overview of the key features about NVivo. I mean, it's not an AI product. We have added AI, some AI features to it. And then I will go and talk about what we have in NVivo that is AI. We call it the NVivo AI Assistant because it's something that goes across not just NVivo, but some of our other products, such as Citavi, which is a reference management software that we have. And what it does in NVivo, I'll go through, is how it can summarize documents, summarize text, it can suggest codes, and it can also summarize codes and cases. And I will end with talking a bit about privacy and security issues. So the core features, why NVivo? So before I talk about AI, some people are excited by AI, some people hate AI, but I want to talk about, you know, the core reason about why you'd use a tool like NVivo. And the first thing is I have here, unclutter your desktop, unclutter your mind. The basic thing is, as we all know, that qualitative research can be messy with, you know, all different types of data we might have collected, all different types of memos and notes and ideas we have. And one of the main functions of NVivo, one of the very important functions, is it keeps that all organized in one place and easily accessible. Another key feature is coding. It's very flexible. I always say it's methodologically agnostic. You will decide how you code, whether you're using grounded theory or narrative analysis or discourse analysis or thematic analysis or whatever you're using. It's very flexible, and you can very easily reorganize and change your mind about how you're coding. And also, it has very powerful queries to actually interrogate your data, to look at hidden patterns. It has a whole load of powerful queries. And also you can use, if you're doing mixed method study, or even if you're not using mixed method study, if you have demographics or any quantitative data, you can cut the data in different ways to look at differences between the different types of people you might have in your study. And none of that has AI, right? It's you management. It's just a tool that, you know, helps you organize your data and keeps it nice and neat. So I just wanted to start with that. But as this is about AI, I want to talk about the new features that we have in NVivo. And I feel I'm quite excited by them because I think that, as you can see here, what I put is that I think it's actually can enhance your reflexivity and your use of memos. When tools for qualitative analysis first started, you know, sort of like, it's actually way back in the 80s, 90s, what computers were good at back then was code and retrieve. And so therefore, coding was like a key feature of what people did. And the thing is that historically memoing was actually more key than coding. Coding was just a way to manage all this unstructured data. And what coding does is that it chunks it up so you can manage it to look for patterns, but memoing is what puts it together. And I think while all the packages back then, including NVivo, had memoing features, they were kind of hidden in the background. And coding was quite dominant. And I think with the introduction of AI, it's sort of putting it back into balance. I mean, this is my point of view, and this is what I'm arguing. And it's putting memoing back because I think particularly like the summarization features is a way that you can start this reflexivity process. So I'm going to start with the first type of AI we have, which is summarizing documents, summarizing all documents, whether they're interviews, whether they're articles for literature, whatever kind of document that you have. And the value of it is that it gives you an overview. It gives you an initial understanding of a transcript. It's a holistic view. And when, the AI summary can help is, first of all, when you didn't collect the data yourself and you want to get a sense of what has been collected that you have to analyze. When you have a batch to review at once and you want to get a sense of, okay, like which ones are more similar, which ones are different, which ones should I focus on first to get through. And also when you want to compare transcripts, interviews, or whatever you have at a high level. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to move over to NVivo. And what I have up here is the sample project that comes with NVivo. Just to give a bit of context, it's called Environmental Change Down East. That's in North Carolina, and it's just sort of looking at these coastal communities, many of which have islands, and how basically how development has impacted them. So this is the sample project that comes with NVivo. And as you can see here, I have a number of interviews here. And what I want to do is I'll just select some of them, is I want to get a summary of them, get sort of the big picture of what they're about. So I'm just selecting them, and you can see it says AI Assistant there, or I can just right click and to summarize. And immediately, because I've just opened NVivo, we've designed this deliberately, is that you get this sort of understanding what the AI terms of use are to remind people you are using AI. Now, if you notice, if I just click here, nothing happens. That's still grayed out and that was deliberate because we want to make people understand that they're using AI. And what happens, I don't know if you can still see my screen, but it opened up into my browser. You can. And so that you can see, the terms of use for AI. So that just happens when you just open up, the first time you open up a project in NVivo. It doesn't happen like every time you're using, I'm going to do one action now, and then I'm going to do another one, and I won't get this. It'll just happen once. But it's just we wanted to make people be aware about that they're actually using AI. And so you can see here are the documents listed that I wanted to summarize. You can see that it can do it in multiple languages. It's quite nice if you're doing an international collaboration and you have colleagues who are using Spanish or French, and your level isn't that good. You could get, the summary of a Spanish transcript in English or vice versa. So you just specify the language that you want, and you have a choice of how long you want the summaries, and you just simply click generate. And so here is Barbara's thing. And if you're happy with it, I'll just say I want to add that to a memo for Barbara. And yeah, so you can review it. If I don't like it, I could ask it to generate it again. And I can also edit it. So I'll just go and add it, or if I want to skip it, for whatever reason, I can click skip, and I'll just add a memo for the rest of them here, like that, and click OK. And right. And for those of you who are familiar with NVivo, you see what has happened is that it has created what's a little link, this little icon here, which means that there's a memo linked to the article. So there's a memo link to Dorothy, a memo link to Helen, and that memo contains the summary that I just created. I can access it from here, but I just want to show you where it lives in NVivo. And you can see what NVivo did was that it automatically created a folder under memos for AI summaries. So therefore, I know that in this folder are the summaries that were created by AI, as opposed to, I could have other memos that, I or a member of my team have created. Yeah, if I open it up here, you can see, just open. And yeah, and you can see here also at the top here, it automatically said AI, so that you know that this text here was created by AI. Now I can edit it. I can add to it, but this is what I was saying about how you can get a high level view of what a document is about. And I would go through the others and I could compare them and say, okay, these two are similar, these are different. I want to start looking deeper in here. And then I would obviously go through and read the documents, but it's sort of like an initial idea. And as you can see, that it creates it as a memo, and that's why I want you to keep thinking about how you can use this as a tool for reflexivity to add to this memo to develop it further. But this is just sort of like the first sort of like big picture. So that's analyzing using the AI to summarize a whole document. Now you can also summarize parts of text, so parts of a document as opposed to the whole thing, which is what I just did. Now, the reason why you might want to do that is you might, in an interview, people might use jargon that you might not be familiar with. And so you can use it just to check what that jargon is, or technical language. Again, that you're not familiar with, or they might mention organizations that you would like to know more about. So you can use the summary of text to select just the text where they're talking to get sort of a better definition about what they're saying, as opposing to have to go out of NVivo or whatever you're using and look at Google it or something. Now, you can also use it to summarize paragraphs. And that's useful is if you have an interview transcript or if you have an article where the text is really dense, or, where someone, if it's an interview, is talking at length for ages, to break it down. That's really a way to sort of, again, get an overview of what it's about. And it's also useful when you want to go deeper than a document summary. And what I've done with those is I've pasted them back into the memo of my summary memo to get more detail. And it's also useful to kickstart your ideas for coding if you're sort of summarizing selected paragraphs and starting to see some kind of trend or anything for coding. So that's how it can be applied. So I'm just going to go back into NVivo here, and I'll just close this memo and go back to where the interviews are. And I'll just open up Margaret's interview here. And so here she's talking about, for example, yeah, so she's talking about here the coastal shotgun type of architecture in this region, and I want to know more about it. So therefore, I can summarize the text here. And again, I have the same options for language or for how long I want it. And so here, okay, so here it's telling me what coastal shotgun architecture is like, what it's about, that it's, you know, it maximizes the waterfront views, and they're usually 1 or 2 stories high with an open plan font. So, yeah, so it's giving me some context here. And if I click OK, what it's done is that it's created it as an annotation. And if I click view annotations, there it is. And if you notice also that it's automatically put AI, so that I know that this annotation was created by the AI. You know, it's, you know, so here also she's talking about gill nets, and I don't know what that is. And I can just, again, have it summarized. And again, it's saying it's a type of fishing gear, etc. So that's one use of the summarized text. But the other use was, you know, just trying to, as I said, you can actually, I mean, in this case, these are short interviews, but if I had longer interviews, it might be useful if the text was dense to actually summarize the paragraph. And again, I could change that summary length to short, or to, as I said, whatever, and again, save that as an annotation. So I can have the annotations here, and all the annotations I've just created are all start, as you can see here, with AI. And as I said, if I was working with this for real, I would reflect, I would start thinking about, as I said, kickstart my coding, what she's talking about, and also add to the memos to get more deeper reflections. But obviously, we want you to read and to go through it in this way. But it's just really a help while you're reading. Okay, so go back to my PowerPoint. And so again, you know, focus document memos. I mean, that's sort of the next step. You have the summary memo, but then to go deeper. So working with the strengths of AI generated summaries, you know, they're descriptive. The less text they summarize, the more focused are the summaries. So that's what I'm saying about, you know, the whole document level. It's giving you an overview, but if you go through paragraph or several paragraphs by paragraphs, you get most focused summary. And moving from the overall summary, that's what I was saying, is to, go through the transcript while summarizing sections. And you can start, while you're doing that, to broadly code the sections. And by summarizing as you're going through, you can actually start the broad coding process as well. And as I said, to review the focus summaries, add to the document memo, reflect on something that catches your attention, and start adding your interpretations in the memo. So these are my suggestions about how you can use these generated summaries by the AI. So, look at patterns across the overview summaries. Do certain participants cluster together based on similar perspectives? Can they be used to develop a typology for types of participants, similar processes, etc.? So these are just to give some ideas of how you could use it.
Silvana, I've joined you on Spotlight. We had a question from in the chat. Someone asked,
Okay.
the original documents you were working from were the interview transcripts. So I've used NVivo enough times to know that I can answer that. Yes, you were working from Barbara's transcript and then from a second transcript. And then I want to just check in. We want to move on. It's 12:28. Were you going to show quickly some of the auto-generated coding tools, and then maybe
That's the next thing.
check in with that? Can you do that in another couple of minutes?
That's what I'm doing now.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Kate, I'll stay on and Kate will join in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to do the suggest codes thing. So basically it's well, why don't I go through first and just suggest the codes. Okay, so here it works with starting with the broad codes. And I could do it from any level, but like here, we have some broad codes here from these interviews. And if I want to break it down, to see what further coding it should be, I can use the suggest child codes. And I'll just generate. And again, I could have it in whatever language I want. So you can see here, it's broken. This is about community environmental change, broad code here. And it's suggesting, development and housing changes. And here I get a preview of why it suggested that code of text from the transcripts. So I can check whether that makes sense or not. Impact on local communities, environmental and landscape impacts, changes in fisheries, and I have a choice of, when we had an AI advisory group who worked with us, who were qualitative researchers. Some people were quite happy that just to add the code, but they wanted to do the coding. Other people, so you can just deselect the references here and it would just create the codes. Other people wanted the AI to also do the coding. And then you can change how much, if you're going to do that, how much context you'll do it. So I'll just do surrounding paragraph, and click OK. Now I could actually, if I didn't like those codes, I could have generated again, or I could kept some of them and run it again. But you can see here how it's created the codes and the coding. And I'll just go back to the PowerPoint here, is just the way to use it, initial read through, annotate, code broadly. I don't know if you're familiar with the coding on technique, but that's starting by, so you would do the broad coding yourself, and then you would, as I just did, code more finely for what we call child codes. you have the option to create codes only or to code as well, as I said. So that's the suggest codes. Just to add that you can also summarize the codes. I could have done a summary of the codes or summaries of cases as well. But if we're running out of time, I'll just stop there. And just to briefly mention that we developed it so that you're still in control. Everything is there's transparency, so you can see why it suggested those codes, as I showed you in that interface. And in terms of data security, I mean, we have an enterprise agreement with OpenAI, and in the terms of the agreement is that no data will ever be used for their training packages, but also it is secure on the way to the server in OpenAI that we use. And the minute the OpenAI does its little thing, all data is deleted. So we have a zero retention policy. None of the data is kept more than a few seconds or however long it takes to run the process. It's deleted from their servers and then comes back down. Okay,
Thank
I'll
you.
stop
Really
there.
appreciate that. So I'm also going to share my screen again. Going back to our slides, Kate's and my slides, and want to thank you for that demonstration. I think Brown University makes NVivo available to its faculty and staff and students. I also use NVivo personally through a different license at Brown University Health. And we do quite a lot of NVivo training through advanced CTR. And also our comments going forward, as Silvana said, we're agnostic to methods. To some extent, I want to be agnostic to tools, right? There are many other tools out there. There's Atlas TI, QDA, Deduce, Taggit. So we're going to talk about AI use broadly. We've pulled together a bibliography, and that's going to be on the Advanced CTR website. We actually have an annotated version of it. Some things that we think are helpful to, that might be helpful as background reading, and the background reading that we've used as we pulled these together. In the spirit of qualitative research and our tradition, I wanted to start with a little bit of flexibility. I was a graduate student in the 1990s and early aughts when Cactus, something Silvana mentioned, computer-aided qualitative data analysis software concerns, was first in use. These big tools like NVivo and its predecessor, Nudist and Atlas TI were first being used, and there was quite a lot of hand-wringing, frankly, about whether we would lose the closeness to our data and that the software tools would somehow predetermine or drive the qualitative analysis and the methods we used. I haven't seen that happen. It has, I think, enabled richer tools to help us find patterns in the data, which is our task. I do think personally that the fact that NVivo can tell you how many people are coded at a place or what percentage of a code is represented by a particular speaker or category of speakers leads people to get a little excited about counts and percentages, and that can distract us from the why and how of focused code summaries and thematic memo writing. And I believe the why and how remains our focus. Also, you'll hear me say, I think the foundational non-AI skills need to come first. You need to know how to code and how to summarize before you can evaluate how well a tool you're using is doing that for you. And then I also wanted to say that I, and Kate, if it's okay, I'll extend this to you, because I'm a Brown University Health based researcher. I work in an environment that currently limits my use of AI-enabled analysis. I'm not using NVivo 15, I'm using NVivo 14, and I can't use it until my institution tells me that it's okay to use it. So we're going to go quickly through these topics. We want to talk about codes, coding, and code summaries, theme development, think about the transparent use of AI and methods in writing, and then raise some cautions and concerns. I have a quote here that I have liked from one of the articles I've suggested. A lot of those articles focus on ChatGPT, and a lot of them proliferated in 2023 after OpenAI made ChatGPT available in November of 22. So this one is ChatGPT codes without regard to the meaningfulness or significance of the text. ChatGPT generates text by complying with syntactical rules and meaning, and it does so without understanding, in the sense of cognitive grasping, the meaningfulness of the reference. So the object, the idea, the situation, or the other thing to which the word or the phrase refers. The fact that it generates text in this fashion does not negate its potential utility, but it does warrant critical consideration and reflection by those utilizing it in this fashion. So just a thoughtful caution there. So I loved Silvana's illustration of the notion of, we'll start with code creation. You saw how codes could be created, and then we didn't get a demonstration of it, but a code can be summarized, just as you saw a transcript could be summarized, or a passage in a code could be summarized. I'm currently taking the position that the best practice is perhaps to use when the AI is coding on. And that's exactly what Silvana showed us. A human coder has identified the sort of big bucket coded comments in a particular topic, creating what we might call a parent code. And then using that, the AI has suggested subcodes or child codes, which then, as you saw, the human analyst can engage with and decide what to use. I think similarly in code summaries, when the human analyst has done the coding, the AI can be asked to produce a summary of the code. And again, that code summary is reviewed by the analyst. So I think a similar process can be used to produce interview summaries. I have not tested this yet on how well it works at focus group levels, where we have multiple speakers. That's sort of a question mark for me. So those are sort of my reflections about the notion of using some of these code summary tools. Kate, what might you add?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know what you want to do about the chat, Rochelle.
I'm currently not seeing it, so I will
Okay.
let you filter it for me.
Okay, cool. So one of the questions, which I think you're going to get to later, so you can just say we're going to get to this in a minute, is how accurate has NVivo's coding been when compared to coding only done by qualitative researchers? By that I'm
There are a
believe they mean
couple of
humans.
articles. We'll talk about that with an example, and then maybe Silvana, you can come back in at the end of the time and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
What I want to say as we go forward with coding is there's no one kind of coding, right? This is really about AI, not about qualitative methods broadly, but thinking broadly in qualitative methods. The way you code is going to differ if you're doing interpretive phenomenological analysis, grounded theory analysis, reflexive thematic analysis, narrative analysis, content analysis, and it goes on. So while we're talking about coding, how you use these tools needs to be adapted to the way you code and to the kind of work you're doing. Similarly, Kate and I in our teaching say all the time, what does your data analysis need to do for you? Are you doing exploratory work? You might code in one way. Are you writing an intervention and getting feedback on intervention content? You might code in another way. But with that caveat, I want to say coding is an iterative process, and we want to talk broadly about descriptive codes, codes that just identify content, interpretive codes, codes where the analyst has to interpret what it means or put it in a particular context, and abstract codes, also interpretive there, where you might be using theoretical filters. Based on the literature that we've reviewed and some of the webinars we've attended, it seems to me that for descriptive codes, I think at this time, perhaps there's a role for the AI assistant for the development of child codes, as we've just discussed, when the topic coding is done by a human analyst, although certainly the tools can start from no coding and begin to generate codes for you. This is how I think I would recommend my students to use it. Interpretive codes, when you are really, you need to know something about the topic in order to do the coding, I think that's pretty likely best led by the researcher. But if you're doing abstract or theoretical codes, using a theory, using something that the ChatGPT is not likely to know a lot about, I'm going to say at this point, I think that's definitely best researcher led. And again, my strong suggestion is that you learn how to do this first.
And I think that's one of, Rochelle, if I could
Oh.
stop you there. I think that's one of the key points for me, your very last point about your strong suggestion, is that, especially in my role as a trainer, it's important for me to make sure that the people that I'm training actually know what's going on, and know how to use and do all of these things, because that's the only way they're going to be able to actually evaluate whether or not the AI assistant that they're using is helpful to them. It could be very helpful. It could find something that they can't find, or it could not show something that they would know because of where their theoretical and cognitive brain is. But whatever it is, we have to know how to do it ourselves. Probably have a few good, experiences of doing applied thematic analysis or whatever other kind of analysis you're doing, so that you really get a feel for it before I think you can think about evaluating how AI is doing it for you.
Agreed. So here's one of those articles that talked about what happened when human coders did the work and the AI did it. The other one is a very, I thought, an interesting piece by David Morgan that's in the bibliography. So this was a comparative study of guaranteed income, and I think there were 71 interviews in this, and they found that the human coders captured nuanced motivations like family and faith, as well as broader structural issues that the ChatGPT missed. But the ChatGPT actually highlighted in this instance specific economic concerns and parenting struggles that the humans overlooked. And similar things, David Morgan talks about a similar dichotomy where the AI has the ability to efficiently, and I mean efficiently, in his article, I think he said it was 23 hours of coding when done by a human, and the ChatGPT tools did similar coding in about 2 hours. So there is this incredible efficiency. We can talk about what is gained and lost in doing that. But the notion is that if you're going to use them both, because the humans are going to have certain skills and the ChatGPT might in fact capture things that the human will miss. But the messaging is always that it be complementary. Switching now to theme development. Again, our theme has been learn how to do it yourself first so that you can understand the process and evaluate your AI generated results. There are several articles in the bibliography by Christou, who's written quite a bit about this, and he argues, it may be argued that AI tools perform a content analysis instead of a thematic analysis. There's also some writing that suggested in highly inductive analytical processes, the AI tools are going to be a little more deductive and less inductive. So there's some variation in thinking about that, but that's out there in the literature. For AI-generated themes, the idea is that the tool might identify potential themes within a set of data that have been reviewed and refined by the human analysts. The risks here are misinterpretation or credibility of AI-generated themes. You are increasing the credibility when you engage and triangulate and work with them. So the benefits are potentially using this as an exploratory tool because it may find something that the humans missed. From the Morgan piece, consider this as a first step. It performed quite well compared to human-led analysts, but was less successful at these subtle and interpretive themes. I just wanted to echo something that Silvana said, is when I do theme development work, I want to encourage you to consider all the non-generative tools, AI tools, the non-AI tools in the software package. Extraordinary visual representation in the Cactus software packages where you can create thematic maps or concept maps or visually represent the analysis. I use these tools all the time in NVivo. I want a visual representation of who's speaking in this code, and then figure out why is this code why is so much of this content coded by this, by people from this village or this age group or this experience in life. One of the things I teach with a lot is the generations down east people live in that data set, and to see, well, people may have different attitudes about environmental change or real estate development based on whether they live 1, 2, or 3 or more generations down east. I can look at all of that, and those tools are incredibly powerful, really helpful, and they don't fall under the AI category. And I often sort my codes by relevant demographics or experiences to see how different participants discuss a concept. I could do that sort and then ask for an AI summary of what people in 1 generation, 2 generations, or 3 or more generations say, but the organization, those tools are not AI specific, and are the tools that I use and teach for finding patterns in the data. There's some really interesting writing out there about how you report AI tool use, including AI transcription. So I wanted to ask, if you're using AI transcription, and most of us in some form are, I wonder whether we are all reporting it, but the suggestion is that we do. Qualitative health research, one of our premier journals in this field, requires disclosure of AI and any tools that you're using. They ask you describe the tool, when it was accessed, and how it was used. They note that AI cannot be a co-author. One suggestion is that you also provide your AI prompts if you're using AI tools. So some smart writing in the literature divides writing about your AI engagement in terms of accountability, transparency, and confidentiality, so that you identify how you use the tools, you report in your method section how AI was used to generate codes or other content, and then you should understand the terms of use and know how the tool you're using engages with AI or a large language model, how the content of the prompts might be reused by the generative AI and the company that created it. You heard Silvana talk about what NVivo doesn't do in that regard. I'm flying very quickly through this, Kate. Did you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say, you don't have to fly that quickly. We have a little bit more time, I think, probably. Take a breath. I just keep wanting to drive home, the typical message. But there is I'm gonna avoid the downloaded NVivo 15 question at the moment, because it's the same issue that you had with the Brown license, Rochelle. So we'll get to that later. But another question is around suggestions or guidance on evaluating the output of AI. I feel like it's more complex than just reading it and doing a gut check, especially for those of us with less experience doing qual and perhaps higher risk of taking the AI's word for it. Yeah, I wouldn't take the AI's word for it. So what are the suggestions around evaluating that output? And I guess it depends on which output we're talking about, but I think this is where kind of like the efficiency of AI, as a marketing thing goes out the window, because like you were saying, Rochelle, there's, Morgan took 23 hours, the AI did it in 2. And while that's all great, I have to do the 23 in order to know that the AI's 2 is good. So
good, right? Yeah.
Right. So that's where I lose the argument around efficiency. So I think my own bias would be to use AI in the ways that are not quite with me in that time intensive space, but some of the other functionalities that are more easy to grasp, like the coding suggestions and stuff like that. And you can go and you can have, presumably you've done the work of getting familiar with your data, and know that an AI generated subcode fits or doesn't fit. But if you haven't done that work and you're not familiar with the data, or maybe you didn't collect the data in the first place, whatever it is, then you're going to be hard pressed to evaluate anything that AI is doing for you.
Yeah, I agree. I've worked in projects where I'm the interviewer and I've met all the participants or took notes at all of the focus groups. And then I've also worked in projects where I am analyzing data that I wasn't part of collecting. So for me, this notion of familiarizing, and then I'll also say, even when I was there, if I'm doing the analysis 3 months after I did the interviews, I also have to refamiliarize myself and sort of think about what's in the, data. I think I'd play with these tools. I remember the interview, do a summary, do an AI summary and have well, what do I think it's missing about Barbara's interview? What I remember about this interview was this, and the AI didn't do it. You and I on our teams use debriefs, and we've talked about whether the AI could do the debrief process for us. I think it absolutely could. However, I don't know if I want it to, because when I'm doing the interview, I'm focusing on the agenda and the questions and the participant, and it's this really detailed moment. And I really value that moment afterwards or the next morning where I sit down and I think, how did this go? What did I learn? So the process of my knowing what I learned would give me the ability to go and see whether what the AI sees in that interview is what I took from it as well. And I think playing with these tools and getting to know them, I also think working in a team where you can take the summary and say, oh, to your facilitator, does this seem right? What is it missing? And having tools like debriefs to compare the summaries with, it's a credibility check, I think.
Right. And I think it also depends on, going back to a point that Silvana made as well, that AI is based on probability modeling. That's what it does, which is kind of weird when you think about coming out of quant and doing qual and coming back to quant in a way. But so the reality is that this potentially enters a place of bias, which I know we'll go to in a minute. But we have to think about what AI is capable of, what it comes from, where it learned what it learned, and how that actually impacts what we're trying to do and the responsibility that we have for it.
Right.
To your slide.
Let's go on to data security. Wait, I see an arm wave from Silvana. Do you want to go ahead, Silvana? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that it's an iterative process working with the AI, and it's sort of like, I mean, it's not to do it once, but like to keep regenerating. And we try to make it transparent, as you saw in the suggest code, so you can see where it's coming from. But it's like, if we're working in a team, initially we might not code in the same way, and we have a discussion about it. And it's sort of like to think about how you would interact with it. It's an iterative, it's another iterative, whether it's you want to call it another iterative AI assistant or whatever, or another member of your team. It's to think of it as you keep questioning, and it's an iterative process, and not to just take it as, oh, we created this summary. Yeah, I'm happy with it. Generate another summary.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote the sentence here that HIPAA-covered entities need to approve your use of large language models for analysis. And Kate wisely annotated that any institution that you're affiliated with needs to be engaged in your okay to use these tools, because your institutions, like you, are actually responsible for the data and how you manage it and where it goes. So in OpenAI's ChatGPT, the one that's really on the web, you are putting it out there. You're putting your data out there, and it can be used to as a training component of the large language model. ChatGPT, OpenAI talks about the 3 steps, and it's in how it was trained and how it continues to be engaged. All of those, not the ones that are necessarily built in, that have agreements from within these software packages, although you should know what those agreements are. The open source ones, your data is leaving your institution when it's transferred there, and has the potential to be used to train the tool. AI is a third party, so consider it in your consent forms. Consider it in your confidentiality agreements. Consider it in your data transfer use agreements.
And I think I'll add, if you don't mind, Rochelle, that when you think about that, you have to think about what people know about AI. And the American population, for instance, writ large, has a very specific understanding of AI, or maybe lots of specific understandings of AI. I'm not even sure. And when we are consenting our participants and talking to them about AI as this third party, we will probably have to anticipate a conversation with them about exactly what we mean. Because I know if I were a participant in a study and someone said, we're going to use AI to, summarize our data, I'd be like, well, I'm just not coming then, because I don't want my AI out there to the world, because that would be a kind of normative understanding of what AI is, and GPT and stuff like that. So I think we have to be really clear about educating our participants about
Sure.
how this works in order to help them understand it and decide if it's for them.
And there might be a difference in thinking about, can I summarize a whole transcript, or can I summarize, excerpts from 15 transcripts on this one topic?
There's a hand raise.
I know, given the timing, I'm going to go quickly through these slides, and then I promise at the top of the hour, we'll open and come into you. So thank you for that thumbs up. We've talked about reflexivity. I think these comments they come from Kate and me, but they are self-evident. You want to think about whether the large language model represents you or your participants, and you should always be thinking about whose voices do I need to be part of the analytical process. You've heard that from some of the studies, subtle and situational or contextual meaning might be missed. Irony doesn't seem to get irony, but on the other hand, it's also a tool for checking and see whether there's anything you might have missed. We've talked about HIPAA and data transfer use rules. You will also have institutional rules, perhaps rules specific to your discipline. The APA, for instance, has written rules for the use of AIs. Journals have author and reviewer expectations. JMIRs is one of the ones in that bibliography. Find out whether your discipline or department has academic integrity rules that include the use of AI, and follow them. There's been a lot of writing about the concern about the lack of transparency about AI use, that people are using it and not acknowledging it, and saying that it is a tool. Perhaps to normalize the use of the tool, perhaps to make very clear how we are using the tool. One of the things I want to do is, Michael Littman is our new future associate provost for AI. We hope that this isn't the first time we're talking about this, and we have the opportunity to have a couple more of these. And I'd like, for instance, to invite other speakers to consider this. I think that we've talked a little bit about this, the possibility that when you're working with theories and frameworks, there is a possibility that those nuances are missed. Here's our summary. AI in qualitative research is best used as an aid to human-driven analysis, not as a replacement for it. Transparency is important. Please indicate the level of AI support in your protocols, just as you would describe human engagement in your methodology. There are lots of methodologies and protocols in qualitative analysis, and whether and how you use AI is going to vary among those methods. Benefits, potentially time saved, although Kate questions that, especially for descriptive tasks. Costs, loss of connection and familiarization with the data. Potential for bias, potential for a risk to confidentiality. So we're just at the top of the hour. I really thought we're going to have 20 minutes to talk to each other, but okay, we're going to go with this. These are our next steps. The annotated bibliography is going to be available on the CTR website. You're going to get a survey. Please tell us how we did. Please tell us what you're interested in learning more about, and suggest future AI for Qual topics. There's a huge team of people who made this possible. I just wanted to thank them and all of you for joining us, and to say a little bit about who Kate and I are. We pretty much said that at the top of the hour. I will stop sharing. As I said, we're going to stay around. I don't know if Silvana can, but Kate and I are definitely available for the next 20 minutes. I know there was a question. I'm wondering if that person can unmute themselves. And I know that maybe there's been some chatting that I haven't seen. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna be quick to give a time for other people as well. I'm a child psychiatrist, and I just have a question about AI being a third party. Is there any future anticipation of AI being developed inside institutions to be more fostering our work and our data to be not at risk of privacy and data breach, especially for those who's gonna do research with patients and like where this is our like how can we
Right.
join the force while protect ourselves and our data.
So thank you. It's a really smart question. Kate, do you want to go?
I just wanted to say that there is another comment in the chat that says Brown's Center for Computation and Visualization hosts dozens of open weight large language models that can be run on Brown's infrastructure. The data never leave Brown's data center, and they leave a link, but you can probably look it up as well. But the question, I mean, I think that's amazing, and I think that would be an interesting conversation to start having with CCV. The somewhat nuance of that is that we're all in different spaces, and like if I have a grant, my data runs through the Miriam Hospital, so I'm out of environment if I use CCV, right? Unless I have some kind of use agreement going on. But it's a really good point, and one that I would love to explore further, because that's one of my biggest concerns with where our data and transcripts and people's voices go, and how willingly and readily we can get it back without anybody else touching it.
And I'll quickly answer Dr. El-Najjar's question, and then Silvana, give you the mic. I have no idea what our hospital systems are doing, so I do not speak for them here. But I have read about other efforts to have bounded, within the entity efforts. And I think that that's something I can inquire in our data analysts from our data analysts and ask that we be updated, because I think it's a really important question. I do not know, however, I've only read articles about other systems doing that. Silvana?
Right. I can just to say that we're very aware of that in NVivo, and in fact, we're working on developing two types of possibilities. And one is that we could, if your university or organization has its own link to an AI, that you could link to that instead of ours, but also that we're looking at also providing a secure environment, so that it's not going out to OpenAI. So we are very aware of this issue, and we're working on developing that, particularly for hospital research, research with patients, very sensitive data. So AI is developing very quickly, I should say. Part of my job is to keep track of the changes, and next year will look very different, I'll say.
Which is behind the spirit of let's do this again in the fall and let's do this again next spring. I also want to say, I know we have users who are not NVivo users. So if we need a demonstration of Atlas T, because I know that some of the CTR affiliated institutions work in that, I'd be open to doing that. I think I should probably say a word about the fact that if you are using it from Brown, you're not going to see the AI assistant. We did reach out to the IT folks, and that's not enabled for us, or for you. It costs a little bit. It's not part of their enterprise license, which is the license that governs their sharing the software to the community. So if you have specific interests in using it, you can write to software@brown.edu, and they will write back about what the possibilities are. I invited them here. I don't know if anyone from software is with us, because I wanted them to hear what Silvana had to say about the tool. And if it continues to be something that's of strong interest to you, you can connect to me, and we'll through advanced CTR, we can let people know that there's interest in it. But I recognize that we're talking about something that either people have to pay for or do with another tool at this time in our environments.
What questions do people have that we can address?
Or skills or wisdom or experience. There are folks who may be using these tools in ways that you and I are not, Kate, and I would love to
Yeah,
hear.
don't be shy.
I can
I
ask.
just have a comment. Oh, I can wait.
No, you go ahead. I was just gonna fill a space.
No, I was just going to say thank you. This is really amazing. I'm part of this VA Rapid Qualitative Methods Training Hub, and so we get the AI question all the time. Basically, like, can we just use AI to do rapid qualitative analysis? And so I appreciate all of the points that you've brought up. And I think I'm curious if this has come up in the work that you've done, but it seems like a lot of people are gravitating towards AI because they don't know how to do qualitative methods, and they see it as a replacement for doing it for them, you know, or there's like quick and easy way, kind of like with rapid qualitative methods. That's what we get to, is that people who are like, I don't really know how to do qualitative methods, and so this is the easy way to do it. And so I wondered if you had, you know, wanted to speak to that at all, or if that has been your experience. And I will say I appreciate everything you talked about, how like this is complementary, it's really not a replacement for the work, or if you do it, you have to be cautious. So I'll just stop there. I just wanted to say thank you.
I so appreciate that comment. I'm the director of the Qualitative Science and Methods Training Program. And as part of that program, we do workshop where we literally spend 2 hours a week walking people through their qualitative or mixed method studies and giving them the skills along the way, every piece of it, from developing their agendas to, facilitating their interviews, to how to code, how to create a coding structure, everything. And there's often questions in QSMTP about, how long it takes to get this work done. But again, like I said earlier, Andrea, like my job is to train people to know how to do it. So I always make them do it. Sometimes I even make them hard code on paper because I think it's a really good strategy to learn how to code data first. But they hate me for it, but nonetheless. But I have heard many times how people, especially, many of our folks are in this realm of Brown and Brown University Health and CNE, Care New England, and the VA. We all have, many of us are clinician scientists or teaching and science, and we have multiple roles, and there is no time. And it would be great if we could figure out a faster way to do it. But I'm not. My personal opinion is I don't feel comfortable quite to do any definitely no inductive work without doing that work myself and evaluating what AI is doing. And I think that's really the key to some of this, to a lot of this, is like you really have to think about what AI is doing and what risks there are. Whether we're HIPAA entities or not, most of us are working, many of us are working within vulnerable communities of one kind or another. And having people's stories and narratives out there with incredible detail and about really private things happening in their lives, whether it's medical diagnoses or whatever it is. It's our job as scientists to protect that information as much as possible. And I always say, in my work that, the first study I ever worked on out of training was in the incarcerated setting, and incarcerated populations are, as you all know, protected populations. And, I just think everyone should be a protected population. So I work really hard to do everything I can to think about all the ways in which my processes and my procedures, my protocols can go wrong and miss that mark. And I think that's what we all have to think about here. AI could really help us out in some ways, but I think we're responsible for making sure that it helps us out in the ways that we need it to, without risk. That's my soapbox.
I have a comment, it's also more than a question. I've just been thinking about ways I might be able to benefit or use this. And one way that I feel good about would be if I wasn't really trying to write a manuscript or come up with themes, but was evaluating my qualitative data after having piloted something. So often I'll pilot an intervention or an EMA protocol and then get exit interview feedback from people. And I don't usually do a formal analysis that's like theoretically driven or anything. So I think I would feel okay using AI to summarize the findings of that kind of work. The other thing I thought about is when the later goal is publication, I'm also often presenting at a conference before that and wanting to pull something together more quickly. However, I am wondering what you think about using it for that purpose, because I could imagine that whatever the AI tells me in my quick analysis is going to bias my analysis later, my more human-based analysis that I do later, and wouldn't want that to be the case. So yeah, just interested in any thoughts you have on that.
I think the very fact that you're raising that caution means that it might be an okay thing for you to do. It's the people who aren't raising the caution and think, oh, I'm just going to do a preliminary analysis and call it a day. That's the concern that our previous speaker raised. So I think, you know, if it's exploratory and we're thinking about it that way, when you spoke, I thought, well, you know, in our protocols, we often say we're going to do 15 to 20 interviews, and at 15, we're going to assess our saturation. So maybe some of these tools, along with my debriefs, along with other things, can allow me to summarize some of my codes and see, gosh, am I hearing what I need on the right topics from the right people? Who else do I need to hear from? I don't know. I haven't done that. I'm just making that up, thinking about what's a way in which I might use this in an exploratory, let me see what I have way to help me make a decision like that. I don't know if anyone's written about, I'm going to write that down, AI for saturation assessment. Maybe that's been written about, and we'll look for that. I saw that there was a question about NVivo's transcription, and I thought maybe Kate and Silvana, you could take that question.
I don't see the question. The question is sort of, I don't know why, they're not coming up for me. So what was the question about NVivo transcription?
I don't see it either.
Okay.
This is Jack. I can just
There you
ask
go,
a
Jack.
question.
Thank
if
you.
that's helpful. Yeah, so I've used the AI transcription service for a couple projects, and I was just wondering if y'all could talk about that and how it might be different or similar to some of the tools that you demonstrated. My understanding is it's secure, but I think it would be helpful to hear more about that too.
Yes, I mean it's the same I mean, we developed NVivo AI transcription back in 2018. So it's a different AI. And it's again, it's secure in terms of when, you know, secure when we send it up to the cloud to be done, and secure when it comes down. And you have actually control with NVivo transcription, so you can remove the transcript, you know, the audio file that you've uploaded or the transcript yourself, so you have control over that. And if you don't remove it, we automatically remove it. I think it's after 90 days. So you have control over once it's uploaded and done the transcription down, you have control over deleting it from the server, and we do it if you don't, basically. But it's a different AI. And as I said, we first introduced it in 2018. I don't know if you have any other questions about that.
So Silvana, when you say it's a different AI, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, it's not the generative AI. It's not, you know, we're not using a large language model. It's we're using another company who actually is what most people use, or what a lot of people use, that you know, developed their own sort of huge database of you know, how they perform transcription. So I know the name of the company. I don't know whether I can actually tell you, but I'll have to check how confidential that is, but I think it's just commercially sensitive for others to use, that's all. But but many others use it, I think. Yeah, so they created, it's not OpenAI, it's or any of the new generative AI. It's a specific company that just developed you know, the databases for transcribing to turn from voice to text. So it's voice to text, and it supports a whole range of languages from voice to text.
I have another chat question that it's not NVivo specific, but I think I need your expertise to answer it. The question is, do you think that instead of AI, that partnering with a natural language processing researcher that create models based on our code books is a better line of increasing efficiency versus AI? Can you answer that question?
I will answer it to the best of my knowledge, but I mean, I think the thing is you have to understand how difficult it is and time consuming, and the number of expertise and the amount of money to create these large language models. Now I know I'm an alumna of the University of Edinburgh, and they have a very good it's an academic, you know, AI, and it's multidisciplinary, and like they're working on specific for example, be able to translate sort of really remote languages that the big companies wouldn't waste their time doing it because it's such a small thing. So these are academics who are doing it, but very specific. If you think of how much money was invested to develop these large language models, it's, you know, incredible. So it's not yeah, it's not really feasible, I think. But what we try to do, you know, by, you know, when we suggest codes, like it's just limited to the broad coding that you yourself did. So it's looking at that text as opposed to any other text that's out there in the world.
Thank you. I appreciated that you could do that. I could not have, although it's an interesting idea. So I think we've addressed everything in the chats. I looked back and I know that the chats weren't shared broadly. So that comment from Paul at the Brown Center for Computation and Visualization shared a link to the information on their infrastructure, which I know everybody didn't see, but I want to tell you that that's available to you at the Brown's Center for Computation and Visualization, CCV website. So I'm sure if you Googled it, you could find it there. Silvana, I want to tell you how glad I am that you were here to do this, and to just really express a lot of gratitude about that. To really encourage people to please complete the survey. People at CTR pay a lot of attention, and then they give us feedback. And there's a comment in there that allows you to really partner with us. We've all said that this is a emerging moment in qualitative analysis, and we are figuring it out together. And we'd like the opportunity to get together and either demonstrate more tools or think more, maybe have some demonstrations of people who are using these tools to teach us how methodologically they're using it, so we can think about how to use it. So if you're someone who would be willing to do that, you can identify yourself there, and you can find Kate and I at our Brown emails and stay in touch with us there as well. I'm really, Silvana?
I just want to say, and I mentioned this to Rochelle, is that, I mean, we are continuing to develop and evolve our AI capabilities. And to do this initially, we had an AI advisory board, and I'm looking to have volunteers who would be interested to feedback. And also we want to understand how you would see AI helping you or not helping you. And we want people, it doesn't matter if you've never used NVivo, in fact, we would like people who don't use any software as well as those who have. So I don't know whether Rochelle, I don't know if you contact Rochelle, if that's okay.
Absolutely, please do. If you can write to me, because it's Rochelle_Rosen at brown.edu, and say, put me in touch with Silvana. I'll do that. And then you're also, do you have a public webpage on through Lumivero, Silvana? We could maybe put that on the CTR link.
Well, we have there's the Lumivero website. I don't have a personal part there, but I do have LinkedIn. If you just look
Right.
at me for LinkedIn, and I can also just put my email address in the chat. But yeah, I mean, we really work with qualitative researchers to develop these tools, and we want to make sure that we're developing something that you're happy with, that you would find useful, and also to talk about ways of, I mean, I think I think that qualitative methodology is going to be shifting of how we work. I think we're at a transition point. And that's another conversation anyway.
Well, let's keep having it. I want to, I need my community to figure out how to do this. And so let's keep talking to each other. Kate, can I give you the last word?
Last word. Go have lunch. Thank you all for participating. And I am also available at brown.edu, Kate_Guthrie. Anyone who's in QSMTP and would like to follow up with me around Silvana's request for volunteers, happy to do that as well. So feel free to use whatever mechanism is at your disposal to make that happen.
Right. And
thanks, Rochelle.
Amy and Katya are getting our emails in the general chat. You can find us. Please do. Thank you, everyone.